Okay, hello again everyone, and welcome to our latest webinar. After webinars this year on SPL authoring and another on the 2020 PM template updates from Health Canada, today we're going to be focusing our attention back to XML PM, as Health Canada will make a structured product monographs mandatory this year for submissions of human prescription pharmaceuticals, radiopharmaceuticals, and biologics. My name is Darren Lewis. I'm I4I's Manager of Client and Regulatory Services, and I'll once again be a bit of a host for today's presentation, while my colleagues Jacqueline Bruner and Amanpreet Kanth will be providing the details on the fundamentals of XML PMs. With this session, we are revisiting what is an XML PM, important dates around this requirement, and what you will need to do to create and submit a PM in the XML format. As always, we'll have a Q&A session to follow this presentation, and we are recording it, so it will be posted to our YouTube channel and sent to all registered attendees afterwards. We all continue to work remotely following local government guidelines, so there may be a bit of a delay in passing things over between presenters, but please bear with us. From the pre-registrations, I do see that many of you have already attended some of our webinars in the past, and thank you for your continued interest. But we continue to get a lot of new interest, and as such, we'll go over a bit of the WebEx housekeeping rules for today. During the webinar, all microphones will be muted except for the presenters. If you do experience an echo, please double check that your mic is still muted in the WebEx window. The microphone icon should be red and have a cross through it. If you experience any echo and you're using a phone for your audio, you can mute all audio devices on your computer. And as mentioned, at the end of today's presentation, we will have a Q&A session. If you have a question at any point during the webinar, please type it into the WebEx chat window. To do that, you can click on the chat button, then choose host from the dropdown. Then type your question in the chat message area. If you don't see a chat icon, you can click the View menu and select Show Meeting Controls option. We'll do our best to answer all of the questions that we get in the time that we have left. However, if we can't answer your question during the session, we'll contact you with a follow-up. Okay, that's all for me for now. To get things started, I'm going to hand things over to my colleague, Jacqueline Bruner, to start you off.
Thank you, Darren, and hello, everybody. In today's presentation, I'm going to go over Health Canada's new XML PM requirements and when they're going to go into effect. This is going to be followed by a brief discussion of the benefits of XML PM. Then I'm going to hand over the presentation to Amanpreet, who will go over what you need to know and what you'll need to do in order to create a compliant XML PM from an existing product monograph, as well as creating your other language XML PM from your original. For example, how to create your French version from your English. And we're going to finish it all off, as Darren said, with a Q&A session. First, let's review some key dates that Health Canada has announced to phase in XML PM. In June of last year, Health Canada began accepting XML product monographs, or XML PMs, on a by-request basis. And in fact, we were fortunate enough to be part of the very first XML PM submission received by Health Canada for an official filing. Since November of last year, sponsors have been required to file their product monographs in the new 2020 template format and to use the terminology from Health Canada's approved controlled vocabularies. The full launch of XML PM is scheduled for this spring. During this phase, anyone can submit, but it's on a voluntary basis. And later this year, Health Canada intends to make the XML format a mandatory requirement. You're probably wondering if you need to start moving your submissions into the XML PM format during the launch of Phase 3, and which ones apply. You're going to need to transition to XML PM if you have a new drug submission. If you have an abbreviated new drug submission or a supplement to an abbreviated new drug submission and the Canadian reference product is already in the 2020 format, you will need to submit in the XML PM format. And for supplements to new drug submissions, you'll need to submit the XML PM format if there are changes proposed to the format or content. And of course, all subsequent submissions that have already been filed in the XML PM format are required to continue filing in this format. So you might be wondering why Health Canada is making the move to XML PM. We're going to go over some of the XML basics and take a look at all the benefits that XML offers. XML is a way to store information that is machine readable and human readable with a style sheet. It's an open standard and isn't married to any one application or vendor. And this means that XML documents can be used as a nonpartisan way to share data across systems. As well, XML is extensible, meaning the set of tags isn't fixed. HL7 developed their own set of tags, which are held in a schema in order to facilitate the encoding and exchange of drug product information. And this is the SPL standard. In 2005, the SPL standard was adopted by the FDA for the exchange of product and facility information via SPL documents. It's a standalone submission. And the same HL7 SPL standard is now being adopted by Health Canada for XML PMs. Though in the case of XML PMs, they're submitted as part of the ECTD. So what exactly is XML? XML is a markup language that's coded in a plain text file. XML files contain structural tags that define sections, headings, and other narrative building blocks. As well, XML holds tags for metadata and for links. The XML can be displayed using a style sheet that renders the structural tags, including the text, tables, links, and images, in a web browser. It can also be displayed in any number of other applications that understand how to interpret the XML structural tags. I mentioned metadata in the last slide. You might be wondering what I was talking about. Metadata is actually something that you use regularly. I know you've all spent time shopping on Amazon and searching for something to watch on Netflix, especially right now. But the reason you can perform these searches and get your results so quickly is all due to metadata. Metadata is described as being data about data. Specific information about the products on Amazon and the shows on Netflix are encoded, such as the titles, product names, book authors, etc. And this allows you to get your search results quickly. Similar to this, metadata in pharmaceutical applications allows patients and healthcare providers to search for products fast and efficiently, for example, by using the brand name, ingredients, or the dosage form. This metadata can even be used to search for a product based on its appearance, such as its color, shape, scoring, flavor, etc., to help identify it in case of accidental ingestion. There is a lot of metadata needed for XML PM files. You might be wondering where you're going to get the information. Some of the product metadata is in the narrative text of the product monograph itself, as per the list displayed on the screen. For example, the brand name, proper name, dosage form, strength, route of administration, pharmaceutical standard, therapeutic classification, date of initial approval, etc. are all found on the first page of your product monograph. However, there are certain metadata items that cannot be found in the product monograph's narrative text, and they need to be collected externally. For example, the DIN, the regulatory activity and status, marketing dates, and packaging details. But once you collect and input this information in your very first XML PM document, you don't need to do it again. It remains in the XML PM throughout its life cycle. Now that we know what the structure actually entails, we can look at the many benefits of using a structured XML document as opposed to a PDF. With structured XML content, we can use established data standards, such as controlled vocabularies and standardized terminology lists. These data standards promote consistency across data collection projects. Adding structure allows for searchability, which is not available in PDF documents. The metadata can be indexed, allowing users to search by values such as ingredient name or section heading. Data in a structured format provides openness, transparency, and easy access to drug product and prescribing information for healthcare providers and other downstream users. With structured data, there's also downstream potential as the machine-readable processing encoding allows publishing in various different formats. Other benefits include the ease of the submission process. Electronic labels are facilitated by automatic validation. Automated validation can provide results within minutes, leading to faster communication with Health Canada in terms of your submissions. And this means that issues can be resolved in a very timely manner. Finally, structured data promotes consistency for searching and analytics. Moving to a structured format ultimately helps expedite data retrieval for end users, such as patients and healthcare providers. The biggest difference between filing a product monograph versus an XML PM is this structure I've been talking about. The product monograph is simply an electronic paper. It's created as an unstructured Word file, uses the same Word file for the negotiation, and the final submission is an unstructured PDF document. The XML PM is a structured XML file. You send your initial submission in Word and XML format, negotiate in Word, and your final submission is in a structured XML format. Health Canada's decision to move away from the current unstructured document to a structured document is because of the numerous benefits that the structure offers. Over the years, the product monograph has evolved significantly. The 2004 and 2014 product monographs had up to 5 templates. In 2016, a new template, Schedule D, Biosimilar Biologic, was released for biosimilar product monographs, bringing the total number of templates up to 6. Now, with the 2020 product monograph, all 6 templates are merged into one master template, and administrative changes have been made to accommodate XML PM product monographs. Furthermore, the 2004 product monograph introduced the Part 3 Consumer Information section. In 2004, this section was replaced with the Patient Medication Information section, or PMI. This new PMI section featured a clear, plain language writing style, so it could be easily read by the consumer. In the 2016 product monograph, the plain language writing style was added to the Part 1 Health Professional Information and Part 2 Scientific Information sections to make the health professional information easier to read and the critical safety information easier to find. Now, in 2020 Master Template Update, all of the plain language format and content changes made in 2014 and 2016 are fully implemented. I'm now going to pass it over to Amanpreet to show you how to actually create an XML PM.
Thank you, Jacqueline, and hello, everyone. I'm going to walk you through the creation of a compliant XML PM from an existing product monograph in a regular Word document. And I will be showing you what you need to know when creating the structured product monograph in the extensible markup language or XML format using our tool A4L, and exactly what steps you need to follow. To meet Health Canada's requirements for XML PM, you can either outsource the work to a third party who offers conversion services, or you can use a software that allows you to author or convert your documents in-house. At i4I, we offer both. You can send us your current product monographs, and we can convert them into both compliant 2020 format documents as well as XML PM files, or you can get our tool, A4L, to use in-house to author or convert documents to comply with Health Canada's requirements for XML PM. First, we'll look at using A4L to create an empty XML PM document from a Health Canada compliant template. The document can then be used to either create a fresh new XML PM or to convert an already existing product monograph into the new XML PM format. Next, we'll look at how to add product data elements and company information, also called the document metadata. Then we'll look at previewing and validating your document's content and data. Finally, we'll look at the different publishing options available in A4L in order for you to submit to Health Canada. Since XML PM is a brand new undertaking, the first step is creating a new document from one of the 6 A4L starter documents. all 6 of these A4L starter documents align with Health Canada's 2020 master template. To create an XML PM, begin by launching Microsoft Word and choosing which of the 6 starter documents you want to base your XML PM on. And you'll notice that this process is the same as when you use a regular Microsoft Word template. Once you choose the template for the type of XML PM document that you want to create, a document is displayed with all the standard text mandated by Health Canada. This includes the document title page and all the standard sections. You'll notice that each section has 2 parts, a heading and a body. Headings are mapped automatically to Health Canada's standard headings, and the coding is automatically applied by A4L in the background. The heading numbers are fixed and are not renumbered as per the guidance since they are managed as controlled vocabularies. The body section is where you add your content or the narrative text. If you're authoring a new document, you would just type your content into the body section. However, if you want to import your content from an existing non-structured product monograph, then we can speed up the process for you. On this slide, we're showing both a non-structured product monograph and a structured XML PM. The unstructured product monograph is on the left and is a regular Word document, just like your current product monograph. On the right-hand side is a brand new XML PM template that we just opened using A4L. The XML PM also in Word, but with an XML PM, we can apply structure. Here you can see that the contraindication section is contained within a content control that corresponds with the same section in Health Canada's guidance and schema. Now to get your Word product monograph into the structured XML PM format, you simply copy all the content from the non-structured product monograph and paste it into a special section in the blank XML PM template you just created. Then click the Add Markup button. A4L then automatically applies the necessary structured sections that Health Canada requires with the coding in the background. When all sections have been converted to structured sections, you will receive this message. You now have all of your content in the new XML PM format. And since you're working in Word, you manage the tables, images, footnotes, and hyperlinks in the regular fashion as you currently do in your Word product monograph. Images, as you know, come in a variety of formats, but Health Canada requires that all images be JPEGs. In A4L, you can add images of any format in the same way you do in a regular Word file, either by copy-paste or by using the Insert tab. Regardless of whether they are from a PDF or pasted as a PNG, when you publish your final XML PM, A4L automatically converts all of the plain images to the Health Canada required JPEG format. And the final image file names can be customized to whatever you like based on your internal naming convention using the attributes dialog accessible from the A4L ribbon. At this point, if you are only submitting an unstructured product monograph using the 2020 Master PM template, you could publish to a Word document with or without annotation markup and submit it to Health Canada. You could also publish the product monograph in a submission-ready PDF format. And that's it for authoring a product monograph in the 2020 format. But for the XML PM, you will need to add the metadata both for the product data elements, such as the ingredients and dosage forms, and for the company information. So with the content successfully imported and structured, you can now add the necessary metadata that Jackson mentioned near the beginning of this webinar. Navigate to the A4L tab and click XML PM. And here you have the option to either enter the product information or to import it from an existing file. By selecting the product data elements option to add your product metadata, it brings up the Edit Product Data Elements dialog that contains the manufactured product metadata. From here, you can enter your data and select values from Health Canada's controlled vocabulary list. Each item in the list is associated with a specific code, and this is handled by AFRL in the background. The author simply needs to select an item from the drop-down fields and fill in the applicable text boxes. As we're working in this dialog, we can also validate the information we're inputting. And AFRL's validation within the dialog helps you ensure that you comply with Health Canada's requirements by checking that all required fields are completed. For example, the dialog validation checks for missing mandatory information such as brand name or proper name while you're authoring. Once you correct any errors and rerun the validation, you will see a message stating that the validation passed. When you have filled in all the necessary product data elements, click Save at the bottom of the dialog to save any additions or changes that you've made. Similarly, you can access the company information metadata through a dialog. In this dialog, you can enter in the document's effective date, initial approval date, version number, and information about the labeler and/or other parties. The Health Canada issued company name is chosen from the drop-down list in this dialog. If the market authorization holder is not located in Canada, as in this example, then you need to provide information about the Canadian organization responsible for the sale of this product in Canada under the Other Parties section. When you have filled in all the necessary elements, click Save. Note that you can also click on the Validate button to validate that your data conforms to Health Canada's requirements, just as we saw with the product data. Once we have completed the narrative text and the metadata, the next step is to view the XML PM in Health Canada Style Sheet View. This gives you a rendering of how the final version will appear. To do this, use the Preview button on the AFRL ribbon, which displays the XML PM preview as shown on my screen. Please note that the final rendering is dictated by the style sheet and that Health Canada can change this rendering as needed. Your content will remain the same, but the way it is displayed in a web browser can change. After this, we validate the entire file to ensure that we meet Health Canada's regulatory requirements and validation checks. The validation is also run automatically when you publish to XML PM output. Nonetheless, it is best practice to run validation during the authoring process so that you are aware in advance of any missing content or errors. The overall validation in AFRL gives you two reports. First is the readiness report, which provides high-level validation. It provides warnings if there is any incomplete information or any word features used that are not supported by the Health Canada schema rules. Certain warnings are automatically fixed by AFRL during publish of the XML PM. For example, if there's a highlight or different font color present in the document that is not supported by Health Canada, AFRL's readiness report lets you know and fixes it in the final published file automatically. The second report is the validation report, which displays the detailed validation rules and the status of each. Every single validation rule from the Health Canada's validation guide is tested to ensure your file is compliant. This report also gives you basic information such as the report date as well as the document's set ID, root ID, version number, and the document type. Okay, so now we are at our final step, so far, we have updated the native text, the metadata, we have seen the preview and run the validation. Now, finally, we can publish the document to various different outputs. We can publish it to XML, PDF, or Word format. The word publish is what you use during the review phase with Health Canada, and it's the same publish you would use if you were only creating a 2020 formatted product monograph. The XML PM publish is used for the initial and the final ECTD sequence. Note that the final XML files are required in both English and French languages. When publishing to the XML PM format, your files are saved to a folder. We also create a zip file that contains all of the files in the folder. This is what your final XML PM file output will look like. It will contain the XML PM file along with the associated images. Remember that you can customize these image file names to correspond to your internal naming conventions within A4L, as we saw earlier. And your XML file is automatically named to be a GUID, which is a long alphanumeric string as required by Health Canada. One of the things we know you are all wondering about is the bilingual aspects of the XML PM. Let's look at this now. To change the language from English to French, you simply select Francais from the language drop-down. The text from the template is all automatically translated, including the title, the table of contents, and the section headings. The metadata dialogs are also translated. The metadata values are all automatically converted to the French equivalents from the Health Canada controlled vocabulary. And to move your native text into French, you simply use the same translation process you use now.
Thank you, Aman. That's all for the presentation today. We now can move into our Q&A session. If you haven't done so already and you have some questions, please select the chat in the WebEx window. And please send us a chat. Ensure that host is in the to pane. Also, if you're watching the recording of this presentation and you want to send us a question, please contact our support team at support@ifri.com. We'll pause now for a minute or two to receive all the questions, and we'll go from there.
We have our first question, which is asking if we've heard anything more specific about the Phase 2 implementation date other than spring of 2021. No, we have not, sadly. They do seem to be sending out a few more emails lately, just with updates to the controlled vocabularies. So I'm sort of expecting that we're going to be hearing something in the next week or two. I'm hoping, but we haven't heard anything specific. And similarly, we have a question that's asking if about what date the XML format might be mandatory at Health Canada. And again, we don't have a specific date for that, but we're expecting by the end of the year is what we are. That's what they're saying. So we're hoping that they're going to be sticking to that.
We have a question about the drug product database. Could you please confirm what version will be added to Health Canada database, XML or PDF? So once you move to XML, the PDF is no longer required. So I'm hoping that the drug product database will be updated to accommodate the XML PM. Okay, there's a question about drug product database as well. Are there any approved XML PMs published by Health Canada on their product Monograph database website? I don't think there is any at the moment on CPT because it's still undergoing changes to the website, but there is a sample available by Health Canada.
And I guess further to that, there has been approved XML PMs accepted by Health Canada, but just no position or no website to display those as of yet. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Okay, we have a question about the two languages. When first submitting your product monograph in XML format to Health Canada, do you submit only the English version first and then, once approved, submit the French version? Or do you have to submit the English-French version when submitting for the first time? That's a great question. No, you don't have to submit your secondary language product monograph together with your primary language. You can submit the secondary language no later than 20 days after the issuance of notice of compliance. But I've heard that Health Canada might be looking into making it a collective submission in near future. So they may ask you to submit both language XML PMs together at once, but that's not the case at the moment. So you don't have to submit them together for now.
We had somebody ask if they can submit a dummy or a sample XML PM to Health Canada prior to the original one. We're not actually sure about that. That's a great question, but we haven't heard specifically, and we haven't asked, though, either about that. So, sorry, I don't know the answer to that one. And somebody's asking for the link to the sample that Health Canada provided, the sample XML PM, and we will send a link out. We will have that added to our we can probably add that to the email, I suppose, that we'll send out afterwards with the link to the YouTube video recording, and we'll add it also probably to the YouTube page. So yeah, we will add a link to that for you.
Here I have a question about images. Since the XML will be on the database, how can we access the images since they are not part of the PM? So the images will be, I know they're included as a separate file in the submission folder, but once they're displayed on a web browser, the images will appear at the exact location where they're supposed to be inserted within the narrative text. So they will appear in the same XML PM in the web browser view.
Another question, will or has the ECTD 8 Health Canada submission validation criteria been updated, or will it be updated to incorporate the validation of an XML PM? I presume it will be, because they are creating validation for XML PM, but I haven't heard specifically about the ECTD validation criteria. So again, we're not 100% sure on that one. But very good question. We'll try to find out.
Here we have a question about the functionality of A4L. With A4L, is it possible to work in track changes to generate the annotation version? Yes, you can. So A4L, as it's a plugin in Word, you can still turn on the track changes. And when you are publishing to Word, we allow you two options. So you can either publish it as a clean copy, which means without the track changes, or you can publish it as an annotation. That will contain all your track changes as well as any comments that you insert during your authoring process.
Okay, we have a question about charges for our services and the cost for our software if it was to be purchased. That's something that we'll have to take offline, and we can follow up in an email.
Somebody's asking if we can author in the French first and then translate into English. Yes, definitely you can. You can author in whichever language that you want first and have it translated into the other language. Doesn't matter where you start, which one you start with. And another one about French, which is great. Does your metadata dialog allow French words to be pasted into it when it's set to show English, when we're in English? Yes, you can. Yes, you definitely can. If you're working in an English file, though, the drop-downs are going to all be in English. If you're working in a French file, like you've set the document to be French, then everything would be in French. I hope that makes sense.
And then we have a question about the submission process. Can XML PM be submitted as a standalone or only within the ECTD sequence? That's a very popular question that we get very often. Thank you for asking. So the XML PM at this time cannot be submitted as a standalone file like we do for the FDA SPL files via the ESG. The XML PM must only be submitted via the ECTD module 1. And just to note that when you are submitting this in your ECTD module, please ensure that you do not include any other file or subfolder other than the XML file and the associated images, as you might run into validation failures.
We have one more question. Excellent question. When will your XML PM product be released? It is actually released right now, and people are using it to author their XML PMs. They're also using it to create their 2020 format submissions as well in the Word format. It does handle both of those. So if you want more information, you can contact us at probably connect@i4i.com or support@i4i.com, as it says on the screen. Either you would be connected to somebody that would be able to help you with that.
Okay, thank you very much for your questions today. We received a couple more, which we'll follow up offline with. If you do have any other questions, please send us an email and we'd be glad to help you out. Thanks everyone for your time this afternoon, and please look for our next webinar meeting invite coming in the near future. Thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone.